In this edition of Tester Tales, I'm going to be talking about ArcheAge. It's a new MMO developed by Trion Worlds. For anybody who's unfamiliar with Trion Worlds, they're known for not only Rift, but also Defiance, as far as the games they already have out there right now. It is a high fantasy style MMO. You have the 4 different races that kind of inhabit these 2 continents that are kind of separated by a huge birth of water. And it's the Nuians. The Nuians are the ones kind of known as the Conquerors. They're, you can tell, heavily influenced by Eastern European kind of medieval style individuals. You have the Elves, which, I mean, Elves are pretty much self-explanatory. They didn't even bother to give them a different name, and they're there because Elves. You really can't have a fantasy game, I guess, without having Elves involved. Don't know why they couldn't have dwarves in there. You know, I guess their whole excuse is, oh, dwarves are just nothing more than short humanoids, which is kind of racist thing to say, but whatever, you know what, that's their decision, so be it. It's not even really that much of a deal breaker. And then you also have, and the thing is, the Elves and the Nuians are kind of one faction, because in a lot of MMOs nowadays, for some reason, you have to have factions. It's these people versus these people, not necessarily one of them's good or one of them's bad, it's just their opposing forces. And then on the other side of the force, you have the Harani, which I probably butchered that name, I do apologize if I did, but they are more influenced by the Eastern cultures, as you can tell by a lot of the kind of garbs that they wear and the way they're situated. And they're more of a originally peaceful, almost nomadic kind of setup for their people. And then you also have the Firran, which I kind of butchered that name as well. I'm not really good at pronouncing fantasy-based names, sorry. And they're cat people because, again, anthros, just like elves, are kind of the cool thing to have. But it is, I guess, a little bit different than what you'd see in some MMOs, but not too different. And those are the 4 different races that you have available in this expansive world. And what the story is Yana is this person who had great power, and in a time of great peril because of all this infighting, the kind of world that they're in, the realm they're in, is falling apart. So in a last desperate act, Yana kind of opens up this portal, this little pathway to a new realm that hopefully they can prosper. But unfortunately that's not the case, and the 2 factions are still kind of clashing despite some level of peace. And there's a little bit more to the story that you kind of delve into as you play the game. Each one kind of has a little bit of different starting points as far as what's explained between the story, the backstory between all of them. And the one thing that it does have is similar to Star Wars: The Old Republic, is there's some storytelling involved. When you go to different, either completing quests or starting quests, you'll notice that you'll either get a cutscene that kind of explains backstory, to which you find out your character is somehow involved with Yana because you're having flashbacks almost as if you're a reincarnation, or you just happen to see these memories. They still haven't really established that yet early in the game, of how Yana came to be the way that she was as far as power is concerned, almost as a divine individual, and so on. Or you'll actually get cutscenes where you'll see your created character kind of doing different things as far as opening up a box because you're looking for a ring or so on. In terms of story, again, I'm really trying, I used to love MMOs, I'm really trying not to bash this because of it, but it isn't much different than what you've already seen in those terms. The one thing I will give it, though, is the class system isn't traditional, and that's a good thing. The way it works is you have different subclasses to choose from, which kind of cater to different playstyles. Whether you're a melee combatant, you're going to be a ranged fighter with archery, or you want to go ahead and dabble in dark magic, whether it be putting debuffs or damage, or you want to go ahead and heal with like vitalism, and so on. And the way the subclasses work is once you go ahead and go from your standard level and you pick that subclass, at level 5 you're able to unlock another subclass, which can be either any of the subclasses you saw from the beginning, or it can be an advanced subclass of what you've already picked. For instance, with my character, I kind of went the fighter route, and from there I had the subclasses either defense or oromancy, which I chose defense. And then you have, at level 10, a 3rd subclass that you can go ahead and pick. And from there, same deal. You can go ahead and choose one of the original different subclasses you've seen from the beginning of the game. Or, for instance, if you pick 2 different classes to begin with, you can pick an advanced class from either of 2 those two previously chosen classes. And the way it works is with those 3 different classes, or subclasses, they come together to create your class. So it's a different style than I've seen in most games, and I can kind of appreciate that. That's at least somewhat innovative in terms of gameplay. Because the combination I actually picked is I went the whole fighting beginning, went for defense for the second subclass, the more advanced version of the fighting route, and then went with vitalism, which I should have seen this coming, but turned my character into a paladin in terms of class. And you do have, as far as combat's concerned, it's for the most part point and click. The way it works is it's a targeting based system. It's not a skill shot system like some games have kind of started. It's to the point where I can even have my back facing different enemies and still be able to just click a button, click, 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 and still be able to do that attack. But again, that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's what's the norm in MMOs, and it's a playstyle that people are used to, so it still makes it accessible to casual MMO players as well as seasoned ones. And with each level, of course, you can go ahead and pick between the different subclasses that you have as far as which one to go ahead and pick next. And as you continue to level, those will automatically go up in ranks depending on what level you get to from there as well. And in terms of travel, the way it works out is near the very beginning of the game, you actually get a horse. You get to go ahead and choose the color that you want to go ahead and pick, and at least from the beginning you have a mount. But it goes a little bit further. There's other ways of traveling as well. In terms of swimming, you can go ahead and either in the ocean or even just in lakes or just bodies of water swim as you normally would in most MMOs, or you have the option of getting, at first you're given just a little boat, but later on they've already shown off entire ships that you can eventually get, or you can even dabble in naval combat if you wanted to. So there's a little bit of freedom, more so than you see in MMOs. It definitely looks like there's a lot to do. There's countless professions, as I'm sure you're probably going to see in the video that pops up kind of just demonstrating. The creator player is surprisingly in-depth. You have the different presets that people are used to, but if you want to, like if you're a fan of creating characters, you can go even further and go into the sliders, and you can tweak a lot of different little aspects to kind of make a truly unique character that doesn't look like anybody else's, unless for some reason you put up a video of how you made your character and they happen to watch it. But otherwise, as I said, there is a lot of depth to their creative player in that respect. What they've shown so far in terms of quests is, of course, as always, you have a lot of different fetch quests. Go here, do that, kill this, kill that. But you have 2 ways of kind of tracking your quests. Well, same as always, you have the quest tracker. But what you'll notice is underneath your character, there's going to be little arrows pointing, and it's numbered. So you'll have, okay, well, this quest, you have to go here and grab this book. Quest number 2, you have to go and kill this many animals. Or quest 3 is the actual main story quest, go in this direction. And you'll see the little arrows underneath you pointing whichever direction you kind of need to head into, as well as different colors so you don't get them mixed up in different numbers. Whether or not that'll be in the final game, I'm unsure of, but that should help more casual players kind of get around, and is even, once again, helpful to even veteran players as far as keeping them on the right path. And there's little things that are kind of funny, like the fact that you can climb up certain trees. For one of the quests, you actually have to get a cat out of a tree. I'm sure that's probably going to be for other purposes further on into the game. Not only that, but you can go ahead, there's one mission where you have to go into a fortress which is high above land and surrounded by a moat. So you have to climb a tree up to a certain extent and then kind of climb a rope and then kind of just shimmy across to get over to the other side into the fortress to kill a bunch of bandits and then the boss that's lying within. Combat is surprisingly fluid. The way it works is you have a combo system to where you can go ahead and go from one move to the next, and you get bonuses in terms of either damage, stuns, knockdown, or from going from one to the other. And it really tries to get you to try different combinations instead of just sticking to the standard auto attack or just sticking to one certain setup. Unless you like doing a certain setup because of the effect that you get or the combat damage bonus for doing such a combo. But it really gets you to try and experiment with the different kind of combinations of attacks that you can do and seeing how different situations it may be more beneficial than other combos. Another thing I find interesting is the game, from what they've stated so far, is going to be free to play, but of course with all free to play games they have to make money somehow, so the way they're going to do it is they're going to have a store system. You can go ahead and buy a certain amount of their in-game currency to go ahead and get different either cosmetic items, which comes to expect from free-to-play games, or even just certain weapons. It's certainly not, at least from the looks of it, pay to win. And what they do is they also kind of reward, as far as in-game currency, not ones that you have to buy, but just what's rewarded to you, you get what's known as labor points. Now what labor points are used for is when you collect certain loot, like higher level loot, like your classic blues, greens, purples, and so on, you have to have a certain amount of labor points in order to go ahead and identify those items. Otherwise, you're not going to know what it is, you can't equip it, you can't do anything with it. And the way labor points are provided is simply just by playing the game. The longer you play the game, the more labor points you accumulate. And I'm more than sure there's other ways to get even more labor points. I haven't seen it myself just yet. And that's all I have to say about ArcheAge so far. I've only been into the closed beta events. There's going to be more in the future, so I might have more to play and even more to say. I tried to do this as few takes as possible, but from the jump cuts you can see how I kind of failed, and chances are there's probably a few things I've even forgotten. But the one thing I will say is if you are a fan of high fantasy MMOs, definitely at least give it a shot. Try and get in the beta if you can. The one way to guarantee that you get into beta is to go ahead and buy one of their founder packs, provide them money, and they let you in. It's the way it works, unfortunately. Or if you're lucky, you can get in through either a friend or on your own. But it's at least different enough than other MMOs that it's worth that shot. They do have something a little bit more than what you'd see in standard MMO fanfare. Oh, and the one thing I forgot before I go is you also have the option of player housing. That's going to be more likely later on in the game, not at the very beginning. But it's also a nice little concept that you don't see in too many MMOs anymore either. And that'll about do it. Thank you for watching, and until next time.
To side with Caradon and destroy the Anvil of the Void. I agree with its decision, and yet the Paragon Branca was the reason it ventured into the deep roads.